If you are interested in books with magical children that is not Harry Potter, then today's book just might be for you. Today we'll be taking a look at The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan, and today we're taking a look at one of the more interesting books that I've read this last year. It's kind of hard to characterize it. It's clearly a fantasy, but that isn't really the focus of it in many ways. Although some of the fanatical elements do play a big part of it, really this is a book all about acceptance and giving people a chance. This book is, it's really, it's a very tender and enchanting story that blends fantasy and it's a really heartfelt emotion in a way that feels both familiar, as you'll see with the very mundane and averageness of the main character, but it also has a very refreshing and original take on what it would be like to live in a world with magical creatures and how the world might actually interact with those individuals. The main character in the book, Linus Baker, is who it's centered around, hence what makes him the main character. He himself is not magical. He is some kind of auditor for what is called the Department in charge of magical youth. He goes from house to house and he assesses, is this house appropriate and is it taking care of the magical youth? And at the center of that is whoever is overlooking the house, which is going to be a normal person that doesn't have any magical abilities. They are referred to as the master. And then you have a collection of children. And he doesn't really say how many people would be in a house, although based off of the main house that he goes to that has 6 children, that's probably about the size of each of these houses. I don't know for sure. But from the get-go, it establishes that he is such a rule follower and he is incapable of breaking any of the rules, but he does also really care about the children. So when he goes from house to house and especially when he has to take down any kind of reports. So the book starts out with him taking about a report of something that happened at one of these houses, and he has to establish whether this house should still stay open and function as an orphanage, or should he recommend that it be closed down. There isn't a whole lot of clarity as to what exactly powers the children have. The first house that he goes to in the orphanage, in which he is trying to assess what exactly happened, you find out that they do have some kind of telekinesis, but you don't know how strong it is. In this case, just a piece of furniture is used, and then they say that they only use the power maybe once or twice a year or something, but you can also tell that that's probably not true. And the master of the house, the person running the orphanage, is clearly trying to coax them to downplay the situation. But that being said, you can tell that Linus is doing his best to not only get an appropriate assessment of the situation, but to also protect the children, and he is only keen on recommending that an orphanage is closed down when he really feels like the children's lives are being threatened, or in some way it's just not safe to them. And the book does a really good job of establishing that he is a very boring character, and wherever he works, whatever government agencies where he works, it's a boring place that he works at, and he himself makes it even more boring. And that is basically his whole life. He is very efficient at his job, and he is definitely very honest in the work that he does, and like I said, definitely a big time rule follower. And then one day he is unexpectedly summoned by extremely upper management, which I should say, by the way, that the names in this are obviously just silly. And they don't really explain to you like where these come from. There's no mention of this being like an American government agency, but you can tell that they are just mocking bureaucracy in general by giving them such silly names. But the extremely upper management, they call him in. This is a big deal. He gets in there, and he is told that he has an extremely classified assignment. Matter of fact, it is so classified that whatever the classification is, he didn't even know it truly existed. It had only been rumored to exist. And so he is sent to evaluate an orphanage on this remote island of Marseilles. Sorry if I'm saying it wrong. I've just seen things written, so I don't know how things are supposed to be said. And so he does. He goes to the orphanage. He is actually supposed to spend, I think, 2 months there. So he's there a very long time, much longer than any of his other assignments. And he is going to find out pretty quickly that the 6 children there are extremely powerful and very upsetting to people and other orphanages that they have been in, and that's why they are on this island and on this particular orphanage. And you also find out that whoever the master of this orphanage is, who's a very mysterious individual, the upper management, the extremely upper management, excuse me, is actually trying to find out more about the master and is trying to see if the master is doing things appropriately or if he is, I don't know, doing something that is threatening the lives of the children or anything like that. So that is the premise of this. And so then the book is Linus going to this orphanage, spending time with these 6 children and discovering what it is about them that make them particularly scary. For example, there is one that goes by Lucy and it's a boy, and you think, well, why would they go by Lucy? And you find out it's because that's short for Lucifer, and he calls himself the Antichrist. And to be fair, you do find out that he has some kind of mysterious past and he does seem to have issues. But you also discover one by one, no matter how bizarre each of these children might seem, they by and large are good people and that they seem to respond quite well to the master. By the way, his name is Arthur Parnassus. And he is clearly a very kind-hearted individual. That becomes immediately evident in the book. And so then it's a question of, well, what is he doing to help these children to not be so afraid of the outside world? And is he being successful? And why is he not giving as much information back to extremely upper management as they would like? So Linus gets there, and in addition to Lucy and in addition to Arthur Parnassus, he is going to discover that you have a gnome, a sprite, a were-Pomeranian, so not a werewolf, but a person that turns into a dog, a comically small dog at that, and an unidentified green blob, and a wyvern, and just an assortment of clearly exotic and odd individuals. Obviously, his time on the island, he gets to know them. And he gets to know Arthur. And the whole point of the book is that he comes to really appreciate these individuals. And he comes to see them the way Arthur does. And he is going to actually really start to resent the way some people have treated this orphanage. Arthur does not let the children go back to the mainland at all, but just in traveling to the mainland and going and getting his mail from the mainland and getting groceries and stuff, he discovers that the people on the mainland do have a pretty negative opinion of the orphanage, and they are actually being paid to be quiet. And Linus is going to grow to resent that and grow frustrated with that. And so you're also starting to see him just question what exactly the value of the extremely upper management and the whole department in charge of magical youth is. He's really questioning what exactly is the value of all this, and are they taking the right approach to dealing with children that have special powers. And I think that that's enough for right now. I think that if you really want to know the rest, then you should go read the book. I do think that there's a few little twists that I haven't revealed, and I think that might give away just a little too much. But all in all, I can say that you should expect that this is a story that continues with Linus and, of course, with Arthur and all the children getting to know each other better and growing to appreciate each other more, and the way they decide to interact with the mainland and, of course, with the department. All of that is going to be the premise of this book. It's such a touching book. It is such a phenomenal little story that is just a wonderful way to explore people with differences. I know sometimes in a book like this, we choose to make the differences extreme to highlight how children that have any differences can really be isolated from the main population. And when I think back to when I was in elementary school, I can remember some people that really were not all that different, but for just one reason or another would get isolated. And I think this is trying to make that a bit more hyperbolic to emphasize that these are very kind and gentle children that are just not getting a fair shake simply based off of their appearances and the way people react to them. And I know that that's a common trope when you're trying to make a story like this, but that being said, I still enjoyed it. I still felt like by the end of the book that I also greatly appreciated these children. I also greatly appreciated Arthur and Linus. And I really enjoyed the fact that it was an opportunity to just explore what human relations are and what kinds of consequences there are from the way we treat other people, and just our own narrow-mindedness and what happens if we are not willing to just listen and to just find out what somebody is like. It's a very touching novel. Who would I say it's for? Anyone that's up for a book that does have some magical elements to it, some fantastical elements to it, but really the purpose of this book is to just explore what it is when we treat people differently. And I would say that the real value of this book, although it has those fun and heartwarming moments, I would really say that the purpose of this book is just another exploration of how we as a society treat each other. So who wouldn't I say this is for? Well, anyone that is looking for a fantasy book with a little more emphasis on the fantastical elements. That's not really the purpose of this book. I think those are just meant to be a stand-in for our everyday differences that lead us to separate ourselves or to push people away. Otherwise, I would recommend it to most people. I would say that this is a book that most people would enjoy. At least I think they would enjoy it, especially if you're interested in this particular exploration of human interaction. But if you have a difference of opinion, you think that the purpose of this book is different in some way, or you don't think that this is a book that most people would enjoy, then please let me know in the comments. But don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.